Hi, everybody. Welcome to What a Week. Has it been a whole week?
You know, at this point, I think time has no meaning.
Doesn't have any meaning.
You know, and not to get too heavy and philosophical here, but time has no meaning anymore. Everything is flat. The Earth is flat. The time-space continuum is flat.
It's flat. All right. Chris McKinnon with John Keller, as usual here.
Welcome to time-space continuum talk.
Yeah, we're not talking politics this week. We're talking crazy ideas.
Bizarre metaphysics, yeah.
Yes, love it. All right. So actually, let's jump right into this because as we record this actually on Thursday, happy Halloween. Hope everybody had a good Halloween. The impeachment inquiry, you know, the House is now moving on this full vote to move forward. What, if any, potential political backlash do you think there is? Because it seems like the Democrats are actually kind of solidifying around Nancy Pelosi and the core that wants this to move forward. Even some of the most vulnerable Democrats.
Nancy Pelosi, and this is true of any good legislative body leader, a Speaker of the House, a Senate President, or a Majority Leader, is not interested in leading her flock off a political cliff. That is why she was resistant for so long, even though many in the party were clamoring for impeachment going back a year or more. She was reluctant to do it. Finally, this Ukraine thing, I think, persuaded her, and a number of moderate freshman House Democrats came out in favor of it, and I think Pelosi said, okay, now's the time. And lo and behold, the poll numbers, which for a long time had been very negative toward impeachment. There's John Bolton, who's going to be called to testify on the impeachment inquiry. The poll numbers have flipped now, where nearly a majority of people say they support it. Nonetheless, you know, I think if you stop people in the street and ask them how they feel about the possibility that the verdict of an election might be overturned, albeit by a constitutional process, people don't like it. And I get that. I think, and, you know, I could be wrong. There's always a first time for everything, right, Chris?
Guess so.
Yeah, okay. I could be wrong on this, but I suspect in the end it's going to turn out to be a plus for the Democrats, because they want this election to be a referendum on Donald Trump, and really about nothing else. And to the extent that the impeachment process rolling out over the next few months keeps the public's attention, however reluctantly, focused on many of the things they like least about Donald Trump, his questionable ethics, his dissembling. Ultimately, I think that benefits the Democrats, but we're going to find out.
Let me ask you this. How long can they, do you think, drag this impeachment process out to get it as close to the election as they can, as far as a political tactic? And this obviously is it's not a criminal investigation, it's a political investigation.
It's all political. I don't think they want it to drag out too long. I mean, they've talked about a process that would be wrapped up by the end of the calendar year. I think that would probably be ideal. Let the election year be discrete and separate from this. Look, the Senate's not going to vote to remove him from office. So let the House do their thing, have the televised hearings, have the vote, force others to vote. And then, if you can, force the Senate to take a vote, and then take that ball and run with it in the election year.
All right. Speaking of election year coming up, the Democratic primary getting very interesting here. Let's talk about Kamala Harris. We saw the senator from California kind of rise up in the polls a little early on, and now she's laying off staff, and looks like it's Iowa or bust for her at this point.
Yeah, they announced this past week that she's cutting staff, cutting salaries, moving staffers out of New Hampshire and not South Carolina, but basically betting it all on Iowa, on a decent showing in Iowa, which would be top 3. And she's a long way from that right now, and I think it's none too soon to be speculating about what happened to Kamala Harris. One thing I think people in Massachusetts will immediately recognize, which is the curse of the prosecutor. She, of course, is the former Attorney General of California, and has made her prosecutorial credentials a major part of her campaign pitch. Think about recent Massachusetts political history. Prosecutors never win. Frank Bellotti, former Attorney General, couldn't win the Democratic nomination for governor. Scott Harshbarger, another former Attorney General. Martha Coakley. It's just Bill Weld, originally a U.S. attorney when he ran for Attorney General, couldn't get over the hump. I just think that voters, many voters, have a built-in skepticism about prosecutors, about law enforcement. Not that they're anti-law enforcement by any means, but do I really want to give political power to a prosecutor? I think there's a sort of an ingrained instinct for people to be skeptical of that. I think that's part of what's hurting her. I don't think it's a backlash against her going after Joe Biden, although there was clearly some of that, because Democratic primary voters don't seem that thrilled with Joe Biden these days.
His poll numbers have changed a little bit.
Whatever is part of the mix, I think that prosecutor element is in there.
All right, interesting. And back here at home, let's talk about the mess of the commute, the trains, the buses, the cars, everything, it seems.
It's unbelievable.
So we've had some businesses now kind of come forward and say, well, let's put forth some ideas out there to improve transportation around the state. And it sounds like basically all or most of the ideas would end up costing taxpayers more money.
Well, that's the bottom line, is, you know, that we need to spend more money on solving our transit problems, whether it's improving mass transit, reconfiguring the way drivers are allowed to use the roads, various different kinds of tolling schemes and so forth, the gas tax. And a very interesting article in Thursday's Globe by John Chesto, their fine business writer, about how the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce, Jim Rooney over there, spearheaded a statewide survey of the business community to try to get them to come up with a statement about what they want to see happen. And as it turned out, it's like herding cats. You can't get total agreement there. Some elements of the business community are adamantly opposed to any new taxes. Others are open to the gas tax, but not to others. And so they wound up agreeing on sort of a menu of options, really nothing new, nothing that the legislature wasn't already considering. But, Chris, I'll tell you, this is going to be one of the biggest and most interesting news stories of the next 6 months or so on Beacon Hill. Two things that people hate in Massachusetts: horrendous traffic and congestion, and tax hikes are coming to a head. And legislators and voters are probably going to have to make a choice between the two. Which do you hate less than the other? And what they choose is going to be fascinating.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
No wagering.
No, not on that one.
No. They'll take that money on the sports book in Rhode Island, but not here.
Yeah, no. All right, John, thank you very much. Appreciate your input as always. And
have a great weekend.
You too, and enjoy it as well. And we'll see you next time for What a Week.
Thanks for watching.